on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
That's a bit of a highlight that E.L. James bought a ticket to
She bought a
party.
ticket to the party, which was great, and we had a nice chat with her.
Yeah.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. My name is James Blatch.
And my name is Mark Dawson, and we're in the Queen Elizabeth Hall on the South Bank at the second day of the second annual SPS Live conference.
It's easy to say. We are 1.5 days into a 2-day conference, and we've got 2 sessions left. So we're in a pretty good position, I think, to reflect on the show. And in this episode of the podcast, we're going to give you a preview of what happens over these 2 days here at the Queen Elizabeth Hall. There is a package still available that you'll be able to get every session in detail. And Mark, the sessions, I mean, I know we put this together, but I'm so proud of this schedule we put together. I've sat in the hall as much as possible when I've not been introducing and working backstage. I've sat in the hall and listened, and I said to you months ago, there are 2 things we need to do for a session. It either needs to inspire so people are walking on air afterwards, or they're making notes with things that they can implement into their
Sorry,
careers.
I've been distracted. Out of shot, you can't see Lucy's score and Tim's score. Lucy spoke at the start of the
Ignore
second
them,
day.
Mark. Stay professional. Look at the
She's
camera.
mooning us.
Look, if you're going to get onto BBC One, you need to hold your composure.
I'm never going to go on BBC One. No, we had, so Lucy spoke today, and she was fantastic as we expected. And it has been the schedule, I know you said we put it together, I put the schedule together. The schedule has been fantastic. All of the speakers have been great. And you'll be able to get a little taster of how those sessions went in this session, as James suggested. But I would really recommend, if you haven't got the digital ticket yet, it's definitely worth getting, because we've had a really fantastic time the last couple of days.
Yeah, selfpublishingformula.com/digital to get that ticket, and it's yours for life. So there was one session that I will take credit for, which
Yes,
I went to
sorry,
Madrid a couple of weeks ago to 20 Books Madrid, and our friend Mark Racklow, who I love, Mark, he's infectious, and he was doing a talk on non-fiction. It's not really my
choice of words.
area.
Infectious in a conference.
Yeah. But I thought I'd go and support him. So unfortunately, he was up against Kate Pickford in the other room, which is the big room. So it was like 70 of us, I think, in there, maybe not even 70. And I sat at the back, and honestly, I was on the phone to Mark immediately at the end of the session. I said, we need to find some space in the programme for Mark. It's absolutely perfect for our audience. And he just cuts through, I think, all the nonsense, and he says, you've got to work hard, but here are the things that I've seen the successful people doing. And he broke it all down, and it was, I think, a real highlight for me.
Yeah, it was probably my highlight too. He only had half an hour, but he was great, and everyone subsequently who I spoke to was really impressed. And not just him. Susie Quinn this morning was really great. What else have we had? I mean, we've had Janet Margot talking about ads. We should probably cut away at this point.
Yeah,
and
what we should probably do is have a little look. So you'll get a preview now, just a few minutes preview of the weekend. We haven't decided how long this bit's going to be. It obviously hasn't been cut yet because we're still filming it, but maybe 20 minutes. The whole thing is many hours, of course. It's 2 days worth, and that's where all the goodies and the detail are. But this will give you a taste of what happened here in London on June the 28th and 29th. So, after an opening that you had to be there to fully appreciate, our first session was with Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. We called it the new Queens of Kindle. For good reason. Caroline and Suzanne have taken the Amazon charts and the sales figures by storm. And really, it's happened in the last 12 to 18 months. It's been an incredible rise to success. Great to hear from them. This session was sponsored and brought to you by Reedsy, which is, of course, the marketplace for professionals who can help you in your author career. Go to reedsy.com. I just want to say that I think, Caroline, you came up to me in 2019 at 20 Books Vegas, introduced yourself.
Tracked me down.
6 months later, starting to feel like stalking, you came up to me again at this show on the boat.
We queued for a very long time to get to you.
Found me on the boat, and I think at that stage you'd said you'd just transitioned to not shoveling cat poo anymore, and you were earning enough from your writing to be able to do that full time. here we are a couple of years later, and can you tell me how many page reads you've had on Kindle Unlimited?
2 billion.
And how many books have you sold?
5 million.
5 million, yeah.
I just wanted you to understand the success and what's happened to these two over the last 2 years. And if you keep an eye on the Amazon charts, you will have seen them at number1.com recently. Okay, let's talk then about how you've achieved this. Let's talk about the writing first of all. So you write spicy romance, and in particular, you would call it dark or bully romance. Is that right? Perhaps Caroline this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do a mixture. We do fantasy romance, we do contemporary romance, and then we do reverse harem and MF. And MF is male-female, just standard romance.
Okay.
All the
is
lingo.
that contemporary romance, or is there an element of one of those subgenres in there as well?
With the MF.
With the MF.
So we have contemporary and fantasy of both, yeah.
So how many series do you have going?
I want to say 7 or 8 series. Something like that.
It's been a bit of a blur.
9? Yeah.
Go with that.
Okay.
And a standalone.
Yeah.
And your biggest series, I think, is the Zodiac Academy. So tell us about that.
In what way?
Well, if I don't know anything about the Zodiac Academy, tell me who it's for, what genre, subgenre and so on it is.
Okay, so it's a fantasy romance, which is kind of new adult, college-age characters. We kind of market it as like Harry Potter for adults, so it's like a magic school based around astrology. So we used an astrology-based system, which would be like star signs. And then we have 2 twins. We write one each of the twins. That's how we write generally. We write like different point of views of characters. They get whisked away to their fae school.
And these are spicy romance?
Mm-hmm, they are.
Okay.
It's a slow burn. You have to hang in there for the spice.
Oh, do you? Yeah. Now, I have read one of your books. So during lockdown, you had a little mini project, didn't you? And I do a lot of interviews, as you know, on the show every week and get introduced to all these subgenres. Reverse harem was kind of new to me until about a year or so ago when it started cropping up in conversation. But bully romance, I wasn't really sure about, and I was intrigued enough to read one of your books. And it was an interesting...
You went in at the deep end.
I went in at the deep end, did I?
With like the harshest bully romance we've ever written, and you read book 1, which is fully just the guys being arseholes. Like,
yes.
Literally.
Well, that's how I would describe it.
But you didn't go any further, and you're just like, how would you ever? Of course.
I can't go any further with those people. The second session of day 1 was due to be Nick Stevenson, but an injury put paid to him arriving in London. And so I took the helm and gave an impromptu session, but carefully worked out, of course, on TikTok. It's a newish platform, as you know, in social media terms. It's driving books to the top of the Amazon charts, but more significantly, I think, for us, it's driving sales for mid-list and small authors alike. So here is a taste of the session on how to sell books using TikTok. Now, how are you going to run your accounts? There are 2 ways, I think, of appearing on TikTok, of having an account and using it to sell your books. One is using #BookTok, which is where readers and authors find each other. It's huge, and when I say huge, I think I've got a screen grab here of the latest use of the hashtag, but it's very big indeed. It's an obvious choice for the mainstream genres. Unfortunately, Cold War military aircraft isn't one of them. Although I don't really know why. But if you're romance, sci-fi, you will find an active community of people, of readers mainly, who drive BookTok, who use BookTok to find books. And I think a lot of you would have walked into Waterstones here in the UK, Barnes & Noble in the States, and noticed a table at the front of the store that said BookTok made me buy this book, or BookTok made me read this book. They've caught on to it. Although I also understand, according to people on TikTok, that table is now full of books that publishers have paid to be there and have never appeared on BookTok. But anyway, there you go. It was originally organic. TikTok is particularly good if you write spicy and erotica, obviously because you have limited marketing options elsewhere, and BookTok is definitely the place to do it. Jane Ryland reckons she gets a sale every 250 views. So again, reinforcing the fact that you don't need viral videos, don't need to get 1 million+ views at all to sell books. You're going to get fewer views, I guess, if you go down this route with Book Talk, but they're going to be readers, and they're going to give you more often, they're going to convert to sales. Subject-based. So this is how most of TikTok operates outside of authors or artists trying to sell something specifically. This is people who run an account because they have a passion for an interest, and this is how I've operated my account. So I run an account on military aviation. You get flexibility in what you post, so you don't have to be very specific, which we'll talk about in a second, with your posts. You'll get a larger audience, but of course, they're not all readers. You know, most of the people who follow me are not readers and not likely to read my book. But once you're getting 1.4, 1.5 million views, if you can build up an account like that, you only need a tiny percentage of those people. And I noticed when I was doing well, I've only got, at the time I only had one book out. I've got a second book out today, actually. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I only had one book out, and I noticed straight away, because I know I'm very nitty on my baseline advertising, I know where I am, I was immediately selling 6 or 7 books a day more out of nowhere, and that must have been from TikTok. And as long as I was posting, so for me that was, it's a big deal at that stage. Obviously with a bigger series and read through, that could be very significant for you.
So I stepped in for Nick Stevenson because he was unable to make the live conference. However, he has provided his presentation. He's done it especially for the digital ticket audience, and here is a preview. It's about email marketing under the banner of a banner that Nick has made his own called Your First 10,000 Readers.
Context is everything. Same with your emails. When you write an email and you want somebody to buy something, or you want somebody to do something like leave a review or whatever it might be, the goal is not trying to convince them to do anything. You're not taking them from a state where they don't want something to a state where they do want something by trying to coerce them or trick them or convince them otherwise. No, the goal is to deliver the right value that people want, give people what it is they expect and what they want, and have fun doing it, and doing it in such a way that people want to go and buy what you've got. They want to leave you a review. They want to support you. You're not trying to convince them to do something they don't want to do, right? We want to get to the point where if you don't sell anything via email, it's going to be a little bit weird, right? So not selling is going to be weird. So example here, like I love this example. If you're at a restaurant, and you sit down at your table and nobody comes over. No waiter or waitress comes over with a menu. Nobody asks, what would you like to buy to eat? It would be very strange because of the context in which you're sitting. You are in a restaurant because you want to buy food. If nobody comes over to sell you food, you're going to be very angry, right? And we want to get to that sort of situation where people on your email list are kind of like coming into the restaurant. They expect you to start delivering value and offering them things that they want to buy, right? That's the context, and that's the mindset that we want. Another thing to bear in mind as well, outside of context, is looking at awareness versus influence, right? This is something, it's a key marketing concept. There's different levels of marketing to get somebody to actually take action. One stage is awareness, and another stage is actually getting them to do something. So because you can be aware of something and take no action on it whatsoever. Like with my example, terrible email, people were aware I had a book out, they just didn't do anything about it, right? So marketing isn't just like awareness, we have to have influence as well to get people to take action.
After our first networking break, we heard from Joanna Penn, one of the stalwarts of the indie world. And Joanna, who's always looking forward, always looking to the future, did not disappoint with her session on the creator economy. The session is brought to you by Pro Writing Aid. It's become a mainstay of my own writing, of fixing things and making your book as readable as possible. Check out Pro Writing Aid.
So what is the creator economy? So first of all, creators make things. That's us, right? We're creators. And we put them into the world. And consumers connect with, buy from, and support the creators they love. Now, so far, so normal, right? That's what we're doing. But there's also a culture shift. Consumers increasingly want to buy from creators they love. People would rather buy from creators, right, than faceless brands they don't know anything about. And it's all about values. So many of us have supported people on Kickstarter, right? And on Patreon. The creator economy is also a software-facilitated economy that allows creators to earn revenue from their creations, and many of the wonderful companies that we use are here today. KDP and Kobo and Google and Drafter Digital and Publish Drive. These are all companies that help us. So again, aren't we in the creator economy? Well, realistically, for the last 15 years, and I've been doing this for 15 years, I first published in 2007. We have surfed this wave for the last 15 years of technologies that have helped us with the independent author movement. But what I see coming is something bigger, more exciting, more opportunities, yes, more technology, but hopefully will help us with the dream of getting off that treadmill into that creative and financial freedom side of things. Because, hey, after 15 years, I need it. So what we're going to talk about is how can we surf the next wave of change? Because the last 15 years really has been incredible change for independent creators. And those of you who listen to my podcast, you know more than ever I'm excited about what's coming. It's been a hell of a time, but it's going to be even more exciting. So these are the things we're going to talk about: mindset, business model, and technology. So let's first talk about shifting your mindset. It's not just about write more books, because of course we love doing that, so we will do that. But the opportunities of the creator economy are a chance to redesign your business. And if you're just writing your first book, well, being an independent author is really having a business mindset. But what I want to stress is it's your creator economy. You're going to hear from lots of people doing things in different ways, but you are the creator. You get to choose. It's a choose your own adventure journey.
So after Joanna, in the 20 minutes before lunch, we heard from Mark Recklow. Mark is a non-fiction author who writes self-help books, and his book was entitled How to Make Self-Publishing Work for You. It was a scintillating, gripping, compelling, wonderful 20 minutes or so.
So one thing is also take your profession seriously. That's also something I discovered, because sales won't appear magically. All the authors I looked at, I studied, they had this kind of business mentality. So it means like, if you only want to write, I'm sorry to say that, like blunt like this, but then you will probably stay poor. Except if, I mean, this is also based on my experience, there can also always be outliers. But I really would recommend to adopt this business mindset, which you are all here today to learn, so you already have it. And then you have to do your homework. You know, it's not luck that some of us sell and some of us don't. It's mostly, when you look at it, it's hard work behind it, and you have to do your homework. You have to have a good cover, or a great book, great cover, a compelling title. You have to write an enticing description. You have to put the right price, and you have to have reviews. That's just the way it goes. If one of those fails, not even ads will work for you. So you have to do the homework, like James said before. You need a foundation, but on that foundation you can build. And then you keep studying, keep learning, and above all, study marketing. Also take control. Nobody knows your books like you. Nobody will sell your books like you. That's just a fact. And I know some of us, we would love to that other people do it for us, and it's okay. But then maybe you get a smaller cut. So everything is okay. But my suggestion would be take control and do it yourself. Keep writing consistently, not only when you're in the mood for it. So when I was not having success, I just wrote every now and then, or when I'm inspired, you know. Like movies tell us. You see the author there in a hut next to a lake, and in front of a blank screen, but because he has to wait until he's inspired. And all of us know that's not the way it is. We plan our books, and then we sit down, and then we write. No matter if we are inspired or motivated or whatever, because this comes along the way. Sometimes you have to sit down 10 minutes when you're not inspired, and suddenly inspiration comes. So if your books are not selling, you know what to do. The last slide, yeah? Check everything, check your system, check your cover. I know it's not nice, because I have been in the worst denial. I was in the denial of money, but you can also be in denial of cover and say, oh, no, but I think it's good, and the book doesn't sell. Yeah, but it's not the cover, but sometimes it's the cover. That's just the way it is. Take your profession seriously. So you're not longer just a writer, you are a publisher now, and This brings a lot of work, but it also brings a lot of freedom, like Joanna said in her last talk, and there's nothing better. There's nothing better. I would always prefer this, and also the nervous I was before doing this talk, than being back on my boat 4 years ago and suffering because of not having enough money, right?
So our first afternoon on day one, we began with a session, I think probably unique in terms of conferences, of watching a book cover get designed from start to finish. I wasn't sure how this session was going to work out, but Stuart Bache pulled an absolute blinder. There were gasps and oohs and ahs as we watched his prowess in Photoshop bring this cover to life. Here's a little taste, and this session is brought to you by Google Play.
And then the most important part for me is comparative authors and comparative covers. Now, I don't copy, I emulate, but for me, it's important to know what, it's not who your favorite author is, sometimes you have to I have to ask a client a few times to really tell me who it is. And I don't mean just in the sense of a Amazon search, or these guys popped up in my genre on Amazon in a list, and here's a bunch of covers. It's something that's really important to try and figure out, because a cover is actually it's a big part, but it's also a very small part of marketing your book, because people spend hardly any time looking at covers. They'll pop up. If you like it, you click on it, and you have to ask yourself, why do I like it? And most of the time, that's because it's relevant to something that you like reading, a genre that you like reading. It gives you what I call familiarity theory. So it gives you little tropes in terms of like typefaces, even just down to typefaces, or even color sometimes, image choices, whether it's a figure running away, which I know not everyone likes. Those are really important aspects of the covers, and you could say, I have been told before, well, I want you to do that. I want you to find out all that information. Well, unfortunately, I don't have all of your resources, and I don't have the knowledge of, of how you've sold, where you've sold. I can ask for all of that, but that's a huge amount to ask me. So I ask you to tell me, who would you say is the closest to you selling books at the moment and doing well, not just some random, but just who are doing well. And for me, it gives me a good idea of where I'm placing your cover. Once again, I'm all about sales. I am less about making things look pretty or doing what you want me to do. I am a professional, and I've spent a huge amount of time working for places like Waterstones and seeing how they place their books. I have worked for KDP in the past, and they really, really are really hard on what works and what doesn't.
Next in the afternoon on day one, Amazon ads was the subject. And of course, we had Janet Margot, herself part of the team that brought you Amazon ads for authors inside the Amazon organization. She now works outside of that department, and she is the perfect person to give us a detailed insight into how we can make the Amazon ads platform work for us.
So relevance hinders on your metadata, and metadata matters for all discoverability, whether we're talking about organic, which is unpaid, or whether we're talking about paid ads. So the KDP listing data is the core of the metadata that you can control: your book title, your categories, and your 7 keywords. So that is really the heart of your relevance, that particular metadata. And I call this out because people who have poor metadata, weak for whatever reason, also wind up, they not only struggle with organic discoverability, but they also struggle with Amazon ads. And then, of course, in the advertising network, they're also pulling in customer interactions as measured by your click-through rate and your revenue potential. So I can't emphasize this enough. Other than a good book with good packaging, metadata is going to be at the core of your Amazon success. So let's talk about identifying your audience. I'm a little surprised sometimes how many authors come to me and they're having trouble with their ads or having trouble with their marketing, and they don't know who their comps are. Comps are your standard brand competitive set. It's a standard marketing term, and it really identifies the principal group of competitors for a particular company. As an author, whether you're looking at it from a perspective of a book, an author, or a series, I recommend identifying 3 to 5 comps. Now, comps don't have to be, let me stop there for a second. I also got people say, oh, my book is different, there's nothing like me, I don't have any comps. That may be true in the whole finished product, but I want you to try to look at different dimensions of your book to identify the comps. For instance, what I did when I wrote my ads book is I looked at my potential competitors who were my peers who wrote other ads for indie authors' books. I looked at people who had written just basic business marketing books. And then in my case, I also took a peek at people who were at Amazon and left Amazon and what they had written. I looked at it more about how they packaged it and presented it rather than the guts of the how-to. But this is what you want to be looking at, like choose different dimensions. And then go check out and see, how are they classified? What do you think the main keywords are that they're going to? So you're going to use those for your metadata, but they're the building blocks for your entire discoverability strategy. And notice here that I am saying things about discoverability and not just advertising, because like I mentioned before, and I will mention again, your success on ads will rely on some of your organic success as well.
And it was a bit of an Amazon-themed end to day one, because after Amazon ads, we had our Amazon panel, which included Lisa DeMeyer, head of books for the UK. And of course, our old friend of the show, you'll recognise him, Darren Hardy. Also on the panel, Michaela Parks, who is a UK Books relationship manager, Frank Euler from KDP Germany, and Andrea Passino, who looks after KDP in France, Italy, and Spain.
Mark, John and I spend a lot of time thinking what training do we provide for people? How do we get them set up, build their foundation to be successful in indie publishing? I'm interested to know from the inside whether you've got tips or advice for people on getting started with KDP.
I think that's a great question. The one thing I would say is there's no one-size-fits-all approach. And I think quite a lot of speakers today have already mentioned that you can do a bit of experimenting. There are recurring themes, I guess, but it's not one size fits all. Having spoken to a lot of authors in this role and over the course of today and at things like London Book Fair, I think the one thing that I would say is common is that they always have a plan. So there are almost 2 hats that you wear as an indie author. One is the writer, one is running the indie business. And you have to have a plan for both. So that means thinking about the strategy. You wouldn't launch, I don't know, a new app without writing a business plan for it. So you need to do that for your books. And authors say that that's really helpful in setting kind of goals and timelines and thinking about all the different levers that you need to pull within that. And part of that is about building your readership. So I would think about things like social media. We obviously had the TikTok talk today. Fascinating, by the way. But other ways, maybe are you coming to events like this? Are you building a community and thinking about all of the different aspects that will help build your readership and get you that following? So
treating it like a business was one of the things Mark Ratcliffe said when he looked around and looked at what were the common factors in the successful authors, and one of them was they treated their publishing as a business. That must be a key part of it. From Darren, from your point of view as well, can you give advice to people getting started with KDP?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think and planning ahead, and we've certainly heard from, I think Mark's talked about this in the past, certainly heard from other authors about planning ahead is not just that book or the book you're publishing today. Presumably you're already thinking about the third book that's coming down the line. And what does that look like?
Easy. Jesus. One out today.
Because I think it is a business, ultimately. And obviously, I mean, the great thing about being an indie author is it's up to you to choose how you want to approach this. There's no secret formula. There is no sort of magic algorithm that if you put all of these elements into place is going to guarantee you success. But it's an opportunity to say, well, this is what's important for me. This is what I want to do. These are my aims. And then experiment and test and learn and sort of find out over a period of time, but not to sort of see it's like each sort of step in the process is an individual, isolated event, but think about how that builds over time. And I think, as we've alluded to in some of the earlier sessions, the most successful authors are those where you see them thinking about a plan and thinking about how the writing dovetails with the business side of things, with the marketing side of things, and sort of treating it seriously. And I think that is definitely something that we've seen a lot of.
Day 2 got going with another fireside chat with me, and this was with another queen of Kindle, Lucy Score, who was not quite sitting at number 1 in the entire .com store as we did the interview. She was at number 2. She was at number 1 2 days before, and I think she went back to number 1 afterwards because her book, Things We Never Got Over, has absolutely taken the world by storm. We're so delighted for Lucy. If you've been listening to this show over the last few years, you will have heard her rise from quitting her job, actually being fired from her job, and making it as an independent author. So it was great to chat to Lucy. And this session was brought to you by our friends at BookBub. We were very sad that they couldn't make it across to London. We hope they will join us next year. But BookBub is such an important part of the indie world. We are very glad to have them sponsoring this excellent session with Lucy Score. When did you realise this book was going to rise above the rest?
Well, the funny thing is, it didn't even break the top 100 on the first day.
I remember you posting into our WhatsApp group a little bit despondent.
Yeah, I was like, well, I guess that's the reaction to this book. Okay, all right, I'm happy with it. That's what matters. And then it made it into the top 100, and then it kept going. And I think, so we launched on a Thursday, and I think by Saturday or Sunday, I hit refresh. And usually I'm superstitious. I don't look at rank. No, I didn't. That's right. I don't look at rank. So Tim and I were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I was like, maybe you should hit refresh. And he did, and his face was just like, and I was like, what is it? What is it? And we had hit number 1, which was really exciting. We had hit number 1 way back in the beginning when it was easier to do that. And I hadn't realized what a big deal it was back then until I tried to do it again. And it was much, much more difficult.
Yeah, and we've talked about books. You help me think about plot and lines and marketing, and we have our little WhatsApp group and so on. And I know that you have said, and you keep an eye on the charts for other people, that it is difficult to get in there, and you look at the books that get there and you wonder what strategy they've employed. So suddenly this book gets to number 1. But that's not really the story here. The story is how long it stayed there, how long it's been in the top 5, and how often it goes back to number 1. I mean, this week it's been back at number 1.
Yeah.
And this was released in January?
January. Thank you.
And I should say, it's a big store, right? Amazon's a big store. It's a very big shop.
Large.
Very large store.
Girthy.
So you're selling a lot of books to be up there. But in that top 5, we've had Amy Dawes, Megan Quinn, both in our SPF group and both part of our community, both regulars on the podcast. Colleen Hoover, I think you must know Colleen.
Yes. Yeah, we, the first time the 4 of us were at the top, we were 1, 2, 3, 4. So I nervously started a little Facebook Messenger group because I don't know Colleen personally. I just know she's super awesome. So I sent a little message out, like, look at us hanging out. And then she responded. I'm like, oh my gosh. So cool. So the 4 of us hit again. 1,
but you
2,
know
3,
she's
4.
going, oh my God, Lucy Scholes just messaged me.
I think it's more like, oh my gosh, can this girl just give me a break?
So it's a book that's got something about it that has just captured. And do you think TikTok has played a part in that?
Definitely, which I can't take credit for. I'm terrible at TikTok. But I think that, I call it Twingo. Twingo came out and hit number 1 thanks to the newsletter list and reader excitement. But generally books should kind of die off after that. But Colleen Hoover released a book the next week, and somehow our 2 books got tied together. So as TikTok went crazy for Colleen Hoover's book, they started looking for something else once they finished it, and they found Twingo. And so I got very lucky there, and that's still a huge driving force in the performance of this book.
Okay, nerd alert. Alex Newson, all the way over. I think he's living in Switzerland now, Alex. A German by birth, but he is the man who gets underneath the fingernails of Amazon's data and brings us important insights that can help us make really good decisions about our career. Here's his session, or at least a taste of it, on Big Data Unleashed.
Book market, clear skies ahead. Now, all the numbers you're going to see are based on what's officially available to the outside world. Amazon does publish, obviously, their Kindle Select Global Fund, which, given the market share of Amazon's ebooks platform as a whole, as well as the market share by now of Kindle Unlimited, is, I think, a pretty indicative number. And just look at that. We looked back at 3 years of double-digit growth, and we took all the numbers of the Kindle Select Global Fund as it stands right now, and based on what the experience was the 3 years before, we're going to look at another probably 17% growth of that money being paid out to authors. And I think, tell me one industry that has these types of growth rates. But the story becomes even better because every book has a sales rank. Now, what if you had a friend? What if you had a friend who went through 43,000 books, or even more, I think, and looked into the publisher name and mapped the publisher name or lack thereof against like 600 big 5 publishing imprints and imprints of the imprints, and no matter what spelling they did, and then told you who gets what part of the pie? Wouldn't that be cool? You're welcome. Indie authors rock! Yeah, you can give yourself a hand. Now, there's a little disclaimer. This is only the share of Kindle royalty. Now, it is across 30 main bestseller lists, so it is not just the romance genre. We don't have much insight, obviously, into the whole tail end, but because the sales are so concentrated up there, it's pretty indicative of what is happening out there, and you should be so proud, let me tell you. And let's get one thing out of the way, because so many times, indie authors, quality or quantity. Let's get one thing out of the way. When it comes to the quality of the books, this here is the ratings of 43,000 titles across the 30 top 100 Kindle bestseller lists over the last 2.5 years. Indies, 4.5 stars out of 5. Amazon imprint, 4.4 out of 5. Big 5, 4.6 out of 5. Other trad publisher, 4.6 out of 5. Now tell me, and the 1-digit deviation is really, down to statistics. Yeah, so don't bash the Amazon imprints, dear Amazon people. They're good.
After the first networking break on day 2, one of the sessions I was really looking forward to, and I sat in the audience for this one. This is Susie K Quinn, a best-selling author herself, and she gives us the secrets of best-selling authors. This is a taste really of the course, but it was a pretty detailed taste. And Susie's session was brought to you by Draft to Digital, which is a one-stop shop if you want to be wide. Upload your book and it goes to every store you could possibly imagine, and quite a few you can't even imagine existing.
Okay, so let's whiz on to secret number 1 and talk a bit more about that. So, how many of these books did you love? So we have 50 Shades of Grey. Apparently, E.L. James was here at the party last night. Did anyone hear that? I missed her because I went home. I'm gutted. But anyway, so 50 Shades of Grey, Da Vinci Code, which I loved, but not everyone did. Frankenstein, hated. P.S. I Love You was all right. Gone Girl, didn't finish it. It's just my taste, But the point I'm illustrating is these are massive selling books, massive selling books. So, some of the times we feel as writers that, they're massive because everyone loves them, right? Not the case. Okay, so a bestseller does not appeal to everyone. Okay, most bestsellers are, in fact, not universally loved. They're disliked probably more than they're loved. And that's okay, because the people who love them really love them, and that's really important. So let me reveal the first secret. which is that bestsellers target a pre-made audience. Okay, let me go into a bit more detail about that. So, Eat, Pray, Love connected with a pre-made audience, which was a new demographic at the time, childless women in their 30s. So there was this growing demographic of women that were choosing not to have children, or maybe they chose their career and waited too long and weren't going to have children. And they were a niche, right? So they were a group of people. And this group of people connected. So I'm not saying it's not a good book, by the way. I think all of these are good books. But this group of people connected so, particularly with this book, that they absolutely loved it. And they told all their friends about it, and they bought it in huge numbers, and it rose in the sales ranks and became visible. And when it became visible and there was buzz about it, everyone else started buying it as well. And those people that then bought it didn't necessarily love it, but they bought it because there was a buzz about it. And I don't know if you guys have, I buy books all the time that there's a buzz about, that I think, oh, that was okay. I don't know about you guys, but maybe you're better book lovers than I am. But anyway, so another example is The Beach, which connected with the student backpacker generation, which I was part of when I was 19. It was a new thing, traveling as a student. And in Thailand, every backpacker had this book in their backpack. Obviously, that put sales to a certain level. And then at that level, everyone else starts to see the book, starts to notice the book. And Girl on a Train connected with commuters. You've got so many commuters buy books. The first page is someone sitting on a train, drinking a gin and tonic from a can, then having another gin and tonic from a can. And that's such a powerful connection with anyone doing that every day. Anyone doing that every day is like, yeah, this is the book. This is an interesting book for me. I connect with it. And then it found its wider audience. So, bestsellers target a specific reader group. Now, these can be genre readers, and genres are a great way to target specific readers because they're sort of pre-made, and we know they're book lovers, right? So romance, thrillers, spicy romance, etc. They can be sub-genre readers. So Caroline and Suzanne's sub-genre of romance is spicy romance, and then I guess Lucy as well. Romance is a huge genre anyway, so there's loads of subgenres. Or some other kind of fan base, like the illustrations I just gave earlier, so commuters, and so on and so forth.
After Susie, we had a self-editing masterclass. Having written our bestseller, we need to make sure it's edited. And this was Hayley Milliman from Pro Writing Aid. Really, really good presentation from Hayley.
I believe that clarity is an essential part of storytelling, and it is the key goal of self-editing. That's because if your writing is not clear, it's not going to engage readers. And I think a lot of times as writers, we spend a lot of time worried about our plot, our character, our settings, how we're going to market our books later, and we don't think very much about how we will structure our sentences to convey our ideas. But that is the key essential point. If we want readers to come back to us, we have to communicate our ideas clearly and effectively. So again, I believe clarity is the key goal of self-editing. So what am I actually talking about when I'm talking about clarity? I define clarity as 3 things. First, how easy your writing is to understand, and I'm going to come back to that one in a second. The next thing is whether or not your sentences are set up in a reader-focused way. And finally, clarity is whether or not you are using rich and specific language that adds to your reader's understanding. Now, I want to highlight that on this slide, I have used the term reader several times. That's because clarity is not a set thing. I can't just say, oh, this is clear. Clarity is a sliding scale that depends on who your readers are. So every single person in this auditorium now is going to have a different sliding scale for clarity because we all have different readers. What sci-fi readers understand and what they expect and what's clear to them is very different than what is clear to romance readers. It's also very different than what is clear to academic readers or readers who are reading business reports. So it's incredibly important to understand who your readers are when you're evaluating whether or not your work is clear. So again, clarity is how easy your writing is to understand, whether or not your sentences are set up in a reader-focused way, and whether or not you are using rich and specific language that adds to their understanding. And I also want to talk about that third principle for just a second, because a lot of times when I talk about clarity, people think, oh, you're just talking about how to make everything very simple and how to cut away all that makes my writing interesting. Could not be further from the truth. Clarity is both being simple, but it's also about being specific and using language richly to enhance your audience's understanding. And we'll talk more about each of this as we keep going. So this is what clarity is. Clarity has nothing to do with how simple or juvenile the ideas in your writing are. And it also has nothing to do with whether or not your prose is engaging, unique, and exciting. I believe that complex ideas deserve clear sentences.
Now, just before lunch, on the final day of the 2-day conference, we had an inspirational talk from our friend from the 20 Books organization and his own publishing company, LMN, I can never say it, Michael Anderley.
One of the things that riled me up as a very young author was I saw an article about this guy over in England who was making like $300,000 to $400,000 a year. And I'm like, I want to beat him. And it turned out to be someone who is an amazing fellow and provides opportunities like this for myself and Judith to come out and share the success and the opportunity for you and where you can go. Now, a lot of the different discussions that have happened have been very specific, and what I'm here to do is encourage you that whatever you wish to be and whatever you wish to become is within your grasp. It takes effort, it takes work, a lot of it, but it is possible. You know, just a little bit of my background. Back in 2015, I happened to release one book November 2nd, the second book November 11th, the third book November 23rd or so. I wrote those 2 books during that month. And then the 4th book in December, the 5th book I released in January, and I was making $10,000 a month. By the 12th month, by the following November, I was making $100,000 plus a month, writing and releasing. Then I went on and created, with some others, LMBP and Publishing. That started bringing collaborators. Now we pay out over $100,000 a month in collaboration income every month. So if you want to be a writer and be successful, you've heard all of the stories here. If you would like to be a publisher, you can do it.
After lunch on day 2, we started the afternoon with Rachel McLean, a winner of the Amazon Kindle Storyteller Award. She is a brilliant person to talk about getting your book in front of as many eyes as possible and using as many platforms as possible. Now, this session was brought to you by our very own Hello Books, a great place to get your book in front of readers.
So training Amazon is what made my career. As you can see, I published my first book I published a story in December 2017, which was a freebie, which was designed to encourage people to then buy the book that I published in January 2018. As you can see, there's nothing. I was selling 2 or 3 books a day. I had a day job as a technical writer, so I knew that I could produce words to order on very boring subjects. And in January 2020, I reached a point where I wrote about WordPress, and WordPress is largely written in a language called PHP. And it's been, over the last few years, moving across to JavaScript. And I would have had to go away and learn JavaScript to be able to continue doing what I was doing in my day job. I didn't want to learn JavaScript. I wanted to learn how to write better, how to market better, and how to publish my books faster. So I took the decision in January 2020, before the last SBS Live, and before COVID was even a thing, really, that I was going to really double down that year and focus on my career. And I stopped writing books that didn't fit in genres. So I was writing, for example, I wrote a post-apocalyptic psychological thriller. I thought, post-apocalyptic fans, psychological thriller fans, I'll get them both. No, didn't get either of them. And I also wrote a series of dystopian political thrillers. Again, dystopian, political thrillers, no, absolute crickets. So I thought, what can I write? And I've talked in previous events about the idea of a Venn diagram of choosing what you write, which is what people want to read, what you love to read and to write, and what you're good at. And my sweet spot there was suspense. And so I decided to write crime. I have to admit, I copied people like L.J. Ross and J.D. Kirk. I saw what they were doing, and they were doing incredibly well, and I thought, I can have a piece of that. So I started writing the first book in my first crime series, the D.I. Zoe Finch series, set in my home city of Birmingham. Any Brummies in the audience? Yay! I started writing that in lockdown in April 2020. And on April, I think it was April 17th, 2020, there was an edition of the Self-Publishing Show, the podcast, that went out in which Mark said, there are going to be people listening to this podcast who make their careers during lockdown, who write the book that makes their careers. And I thought, that's going to be me. So I wrote that book. I put it up for pre-order in May 2020. And you can see that August 2020 is when it starts taking off. I actually released it in July. It did really well on pre-order, sold by my standards at that point. It sold about 1,200 copies on pre-order, and I was aiming for 1,000. So I was really, really pleased with that. And then that series took off. I went full-time in Christmas 2020. And then the following summer, I rapid released the first 3 books in my Dorset Crime series. And the first of those books was The Corfe Castle Murders, which was the one that won the Storyteller Award. And as you can see, it zoomed up there.
The final session was called Quitting the 9 to 5, an inspirational panel of people who weren't making millions, but were making enough to replace their salary and live off their writing, an aim I know for many, many people. On the panel, Gary Ross Jordan, Tracy Green, Ben Brown, Liz Hurley, not that one, Meg Jolly, and the session was moderated by our friend from Reedsy, Ricardo Fayette.
So a really great thing about this panel, as I mentioned when I introduced it, is all the authors here weren't doing that well or being that prolific or selling that well a few years ago. And I think they started doing well when they found their niche. In the startup world, we've got this thing called the product market fit, which is when a company finally creates a product that is perfect for a specific market. Gary, how did it happen for you?
Right, I was working as a Coast Guard. Coast Guard work quite long hours, so 12-hour days, night shift as well. I've got 4 in the family, so I was not enjoying it. I really wasn't. And my wife and I said, right, we've got to change. But you can't just walk out of a job when you've got 4 kids. So we said, right, go part-time. Go part-time. And the pay wasn't phenomenal, but we dropped down to quite a poor pay. And for a year, I continued writing what I'd started, which was Lovecraftian fantasy and a wee bit of horror and stuff. And they sold nothing. And you suddenly realize that you're actually shedding money. I was doing ads. I was actually penning ads, 50-word ads, to try and pay for my books to put them out there. And I was getting nothing from it. And I had invested in the courses, I'd looked at the courses, but I hadn't found what was working for me. My wife saw an advert for a 2,000-word competition for crime on the Black Isle. It had Ian Rankin attached to it, so she was like, woo, you know. So I entered it, and I didn't win it. I didn't win it, but I got a commendation, and she says to me, you should write crime. And of course, I'm a typical husband. No, you don't. No. And she kept at me, and I said, okay, I'll write one. And I put this book out, and it came out in December 2019, and it sold 300 copies in December with nothing behind it, unedited. I had to do the editing for it because we had no money. Very cheap cover, and I said to her, "This is actually doing all right. Let's take those things I learned in the course and put something behind it here. Let's do the Facebook ads." And suddenly in January, it started going up. And we had a conversation, and I said, I'm going after this. And so I thought, right. I'd heard before, one of the best ways to advertise a book is your next book. So let's write. And I did. That year, I wrote. And we kept the Facebook ads going on it. And suddenly, I was looking around and going, do you know what? We've covered the other half of the Coast Guard salary. This is okay. And then another few months later, it was like, whoa, we're now up there. We've got a full salary. In the meantime, I'd come here. And I remember I walked in, met Benedict as soon as I walked in through the door. But sitting here that day really inspired me. And L.J. Ross was the one who really inspired me that day. Because she said to me, she didn't say to me, she said to everybody, but she says, but she was really talking to me. She said, don't worry about the naysayers, the people who say, I don't like this about your book. Look to the fans. Look to the people who want more of what you've got. And I've done that. That was the Highland Island Detective series, and that is now 20 books in. The 20th is coming out soon. Yeah?
Well done.
Thank you.
There we go. So that was it. The Queen Elizabeth Hall, South Bank, London. I suppose the first question I should ask you, Mark, are we going to do this again?
I think we are, yes. So we sales have been pretty strong. I mean, we found, I think people have been a little bit concerned about COVID, at least in terms of booking tickets. It hasn't been an issue whilst we're here, not that we've seen.
I'll tell you next week.
We'll tell you next week, yeah. But we've had fairly strong ticket sales. A lot of digital tickets were sold as well. So we would have done this and made a small loss. We would have been happy with that because it is a fun thing to do. We like meeting authors and doing things like this. But I think we'll do it again. There's been. Should I tell a funny story?
You can tell a funny story if you like.
So James and I and John,
not
live with us. No, we were kind of press gang by Catherine, who organised was organising these volunteers to check people in to the venue for the drinks reception last night. So we had our phones out, we were scanning people's QR codes, and I was going through them, and I saw John, Rebecca, Susan, Erica, Mary, Sarah, and then someone came up to us and said, Erica is E.L. James from 50 Shades of Grey, who just wandered past. I didn't even look up. So
that's a bit of a highlight that E.L. James bought a ticket to our
She bought
party.
a ticket to the party, which was great, and we had a nice chat with her.
Yeah.
She's really lovely, and I think she's not all that big on public speaking, but we are going to try and persuade her to.
Erica, if you're watching this, I'll make it so easy for you. Fireside chat. We'd love to have you on the podcast. So she's quite humble, really. The first thing Erica says to me is, "I've got nothing to teach because I had an unusual experience." But I think everything she's gone through is valuable. And Suzanne, we haven't mentioned Caroline and Suzanne. So Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. Yeah. Unbelievably successful romance authors here in Britain and the UK. For instance, they wanted to talk to Erica last night because of potential deals in the background that Erica's been through, and I think they had a very useful conversation with her. So Erica, if you're watching, at some point we'd love to have you on. We're big fans.
So yes, that's a long way of saying we are thinking about doing it next year. We don't know when. I think June is quite nice. I mean, it's nice in terms of weather,
I'm a big fan of June. I don't want to go back to March.
No, some people have asked if we'd do March again, but I think June is nice. London in the summertime is preferable to London in a wet, late winter, early spring. So I think that's probably our preference. But we'll see. We've got to talk to the venue whether they'll have us again. Drunken authors dancing around to Buster Birch's band last night may have put the kibosh on that permanently. But
we joke about the party, but of course, what's happening now? This is people have been out for lunch, they're on their way back. These conversations are the reason you come to a conference, and I know it can be. Some people feel it's overwhelming to them. Having those conversations, you have to be brave, but honestly, you'll make friends here, supporters for your career that will help you and lift your sales. So it's an important. I think if you can get to conferences, this is one, but there are others. It's a good thing to do. I feel motivated.
Yeah, me too. And that was, of course, what we wanted people is so they can leave today feeling that understanding what's possible and feeling motivated to sit down at their desk tomorrow and start or continue writing. That was always our aim.
So I think that's it, Mark.
I'm in
shirt sleeves. You're in a suit. So you've got a job interview later, or?
I just like to make an effort.
Were you caught?
Yeah.
On what charge? I don't know. So that's it for this year from the Self-Publishing Show Live. Thank you if you were here and you came up and said hello. It was delightful to meet you. And if you weren't here, I think watch the channel. Watch the channel carefully. We'll have an announcement soon for you. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week. All that remains for me to say is it's a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with the Self-Publishing Show.